SolarWinds MSP changes name to Enable. What does this mean for the MSP community? We'll discuss on today's MSP Zone.
You're entering the MSP Zone, a podcast for the managed services community, covering news, analysis, and interviews from around the globe. Elevate your MSP game by staying in the MSP Zone. And now, your host, Charles Weaver.
SolarWinds MSP is now Enable. The old becomes new again. That's what we're talking about on today's MSP Zone. And, we've known about this for a while. We've had the press announcement, I think, at least a month or so ago, letting everyone know that this was going to happen. Even if we didn't have that, you could probably read between the lines that this was going to happen as a result of the SolarWinds Orion security issue. And we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about what this means for the channel, what this means for you MSPs, and probably some analysis on why it was probably an inevitable and probably a good thing. So for those of you who were not aware, the SolarWinds MSP division of SolarWinds is changing its name to Enable. Why should you care? Well, it's history. You should know about it. You should know what these things mean. In this case, it's I referenced the old becoming new again. For those of you who don't know, take you back down a little history lesson. Enable was arguably the first, or one of the first, one or two RMM companies coming out specifically to address MSPs or companies, VARs, value-added resellers, who were becoming MSPs in the early 2000s. The other company, if those of you playing trivia, they don't exist anymore, but Silverback Technologies. Silverback was sold to Dell over 10 years ago. Not exactly sure what the date was. I'll put some information into the show notes later on. But it was really Enable and Silverback that answered the call and addressed a critical market gap, which was that there were plenty of enterprise tools, things like HP OpenView, CA Unicenter, IBM. It wasn't IBM at the time, but Tivoli, and if Remedy, they're now owned by BMC. There's a handful of tools that were out there from the mid-1990s that were used almost exclusively by the enterprise class MSPs. A handful of mid-market MSPs who were early in the adoption of managed services. When I say that, you may say, well, what does he mean? Early stage MSPs who are doing managed services. Of course, that MSP would be doing managed services. They didn't really call themselves MSPs back then. They were VARs. They were IT system integrators. They were doing a lot of different things, and a very small percentage of that was managed services, and so that's why I'm saying we call them MSPs today, looking back, but they were really VARs, IT integrators, project, IT solutions providers of various sorts. But MSPs were still kind of it was a name that they hadn't really adopted strongly yet. So those were the companies that were starting to use solutions like OpenView and Unicenter to deliver managed services. And these solutions were very expensive. These solutions cost a lot of money to implement. They cost an even larger amount of money after you owned the license to actually have it stood up and configured, because they did not come ready to play out of the box. Plug and play was not one of those features. So you had to buy the software to begin with. You had to host it, because this was before cloud, before SaaS. You had to You had to, get the software, put it into your data center, your co-location facility. You then had to configure it, and that was a process in and of itself, where you had to go and get HP OpenView architects and people who were experts and knowledgeable in standing up these solutions specifically for a multi-tenant managed services environment use case, which these things were not really friendly to do that. They were, again, largely enterprise management tools, not really multi-tenant, the MSP-friendly RMM ticketing systems that you are familiar with today. And so that was the backdrop in the mid to late 90s that led up to 2000, 2001, 2002, when companies like Enable and Silverback Technologies really said, look, there's a better way to do this. There's better technology, better features, and by the way, we can develop it at a lower cost point, and we can make it friendly to the smaller MSP who doesn't have all of these resources available and can't spend $500,000 standing up a managed services practice before they even can generate a dollar in revenue from it. And that's what they did. And so Enable came around, and they were market leaders in many ways, as was Silverback. Silverback actually was an MSP themselves who developed their own RMM technology, and then kind of morphed away from managed services into the pure software side of it. But Enable really charted its course by saying, we're going to bring RMM MSP technology to the masses. We're going to bring it to the non-enterprise class channel, and that changed everything. I mean, it literally changed everything. It opened up the whole spectrum of what was possible for the channel, especially as you had the spark. At that time, there was a spark that was becoming a flame that was going to become the MSP revolution of the early to mid 2000s, where you had a land rush. I mean, it started with maybe in the dozens. It started, then to the hundreds, and then boom, it was like thousands and thousands and thousands of companies all over the world suddenly said, we want out of this old, outdated business model, and we want to become managed service providers and get into the recurring revenue business. And technologies like Enable were exactly what they needed in order to do that. And so fast forward, you had what everyone knows now, a massive rapid expansion over, let's say, maybe a 8 to 10 year period, chiefly in the early to mid 2000s, where you had all this momentum from moving away from break-fix towards proactive managed services. And then when Enable sold, when they sold to SolarWinds, right, they kind of left that brand by the wayside. SolarWinds was on the ascendancy at that point. SolarWinds, for those of you who don't know, had before this a lot of network management, network monitoring solutions that were sold predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly to end user organizations, and a lot at the enterprise level. And Enable, became the SolarWinds, or what became the SolarWinds MSP division, with both the Enable core and then later on with LogicNow. That kind of got bolted in together, and so they developed what was a pretty comprehensive solution of RMM, security, backup, ticketing, all the typical things that you would expect from an MSP platform company. And then all of a sudden, late last year, what happens? You have the Sunburst attack coming out of the SolarWinds Orion division, if I'm not mistaken, and causing a lot of problems for the company. Now, just so we are all clear, including any of you end users out there listening, the SolarWinds MSP division was not implicated. As far as I'm aware, as far as what I have heard and read, it was solely the Orion, the SolarWinds main platform product, the network monitoring product that had been compromised. And so the people at the MSP division said, "Wait a minute, we need to separate ourselves from this because it's not good that they're lumping us in with this product, which is it's a different product. First of all, second of all, the MSPs shouldn't pay the price of a parent company's security problems." And I it makes sense from a PR standpoint. It makes sense for a lot of reasons. And so now we have, as of right now, my team sent me the website URL, and enable.com is back up and running. And wouldn't you know it, it looks like the old Enable. And now, I'm looking at the leadership page. It's got all of the traditional LogicNow, old Enable veterans back in the mix. They were never gone. They were always with the old SolarWinds MSP divisions, but they're back now under the flagship name of Enable. And I think that's good. I think it's good because it separates them from a PR standpoint from what had happened at SolarWinds. It gives them a fresh start for this year in terms of reaching out to Enables and giving them and their customers comfort that they're really having nothing to do with the SolarWinds group and what had happened there. And it's a fresh coat of paint, and I think it's a good thing for this to happen. And what does it mean moving forward? Well, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say it puts, and I've heard only rumors, and I'm not gonna speculate out loud about what those rumors are, but it wouldn't surprise me if with this new coat of paint and a new brand and a new year, that Enable is going to be now on a track that is similar to where Datto and Kaseya and ConnectWise are, which is continuing to grow their juggernaut of influence, and potentially making a play for an IPO at some point, or maybe just doing continued acquisitions and growth through that strategy, just like all the other peers and counterparts in the MSP platform community are doing. This sets it up for that, right? I don't think that they could have achieved IPO. They couldn't have achieved significant growth after the Orion Sunburst issue. They had to make a change, and I think that this does make a lot of sense. And now I'm assuming that there is probably some financial back end changes taking place. I'm not privy to that. I'm not read anything about that. I'm just making an educated guess that there's probably, a divestiture of some sort. But this is, with the team that I'm looking at here, the team that has a lot of years of experience, both with the old Enable and the old LogicNow groups, both of which knew, and understood MSPs very well, that this group is going to be well positioned, perfectly capable of doing some big things in 2021 and beyond. They just because they've done it before, and now that they have kind of separated themselves from the mothership, they're now going to be able to go out there, continue their growth, potentially do some acquisitions, maybe raise some money, do some cool things, I hope, and make it interesting for the marketplace. And I think that it should also give the MSPs who were on the previous platform brand a little bit of comfort. Knowing that they're kind of a new name, it doesn't have any of that negative association from before, and it's kind of, like I said, it's a fresh coat of paint. It looks good. Everyone's happy. Moving forward, bad stuff is behind us. So. I think it's important to recognize that this is a core group that has a lot of experience in the managed services sector. I think that it's going to mean good things, more competition in the MSP RMM platform space is good ultimately, as long as they challenge the rest of the community in a good way. I think that ultimately helps the MSPs and their customers. We'll see. We will definitely see. We'll keep a close eye on this. But for those of you out there who were not aware of this, now you're aware. Don't look for SolarWinds MSP anymore, because it ain't there. It's now Enable. The old website URL, the old teams back together, and we congratulate them. Wish them best luck and fortune in the campaigns ahead, and we hope to see good things from this group. Hope you liked today's podcast episode. If you have any comments about the old SolarWinds MSP or Enable groups, you have some stories to share with us, we'd love to hear them. Send me an email at mspzone@mspalliance.com. Let me know what you think. And until next time, this is Charles Weaver for the MSP Zone.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you'll get notified when future episodes are released. We will see you next time in the MSP Zone.